Welcome. My name is Stephanie, and this is the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Sydney Banks to people throughout the world. And today, our presenter is Maria Iliffe-Wood, and her topic is, what is an insight? Just such a beautiful question for us to ponder. A little bit more about Maria. She is a 3PGC practitioner, coach, and author of several books. Her latest book, A Caged Mind, How Spiritual Understanding Changed a Life, is a personal memoir that shows the dramatic transformation in her experience of life that came through insights gained from being around the three principles. Through IW Press, she works with people who have a message they want to get out into the world by writing and publishing their book. Through Meridian Iliffe Limited, she is a leadership coach and coach supervisor. So without further ado, Maria, take it away.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, I sometimes forget that I've got two jobs. They all kind of merge into one. I was really surprised at that. So hello and welcome, everybody. It's lovely to see you. In case you missed it earlier, if you want to put your cameras on, I'd be very happy to see that. There's only a few of us, so it'd be really nice to have a conversation and see what you're seeing around insights as well. My interest in insights really took hold of me after I finished writing my book, after I published my book. I knew that I was writing about how coming across the principles had changed my experience of life. You know, it profound. I'm sure you guys have experienced very similar things where your life just shifts completely. Your experience of life shifts totally. And you know, for me, it was probably more of a gradual experience. It definitely was more of a gradual experience if you compare my experience to Sid's. But it's been a very, very gradual shifting that's happened over a period of time. And of course I was writing my book about, you know, the way that my life is different. It's all short stories that show, it's almost like a before and after each story. It's like, this is how my mind used to be, and then this is how it is. And the idea of it was that people would read the book and they would see something of themselves in the book, and because of that would somehow generate insights for them that would help them have a different experience of life. And of course, through writing about, you know, how the understanding has changed me, I found I was writing about insights. I didn't really consciously write about insights, but various things happened. I was either writing about an insight that happened a while back, or, you know, even occasionally an insight would happen on the page as I was writing. And so it wasn't until after I finished writing it that I realized that, oh yeah, of course, there's a lot of information in here about actual insights. And that got me interested to looking at what Sid had to say on the subject of insights. So I started reading his books again, because I thought, I can't actually remember what Sid had to say about insights. And there are some things that he says, he talks about very specifically about insights, but with a different lens over my eyes, reading Sid's work, I started to see that he'd got lots and lots of different things that he'd written about in his books and things that he talked about where he's showing insights happening without actually even mentioning the word insight. And I know that he refers quite a bit to, he talks about truth, he talks about insights, he talks about realizations, he talks about knowing and seeing, and inner wisdom. And so he uses all of these different things. And even when he's talking about when he talks about what happened to him, he talks about the experience as opposed to the insight that he had. Although he does say, and I'm going to quote him because I prefer to use his words and not mine sometimes. He says about his experience, he said, my whole world just exploded in front of me. And that realization was so beautiful that I never slept for 3 days and 3 nights. And I thought it was interesting that he doesn't say, I had an insight. Like I can't see any reference where he said, I had an insight, I had a big insight. He says he has an experience, and he talks about his experience. And then a couple of other things that he says about insights is that never underestimate the power of an insight. Sometimes one genuine insight is worth all your previous experiences in life put together. So basically, you're saying, like, insight is like so important. Like, it's so important that it can just overpower everything that that's happened in your life. And then another time it says, on the other hand, when you have a true insight, you have tapped into your own innate wisdom, something that you had not previously realized, or let's say that you had temporarily forgotten. And one of the things I like about that is that one of the things that you realize, and I'm sure you guys have realized it as much as I have, is that so many times you have insights and it's nothing new. And like, it feels like nothing new, but at the same time, everything is different. So I want to just say a bit, and what we'll do is I'm going to talk a bit and sort of share some of my thinking, and then I'd just be really interested to hear what your thoughts are, what you're seeing, and we'll take it from there, really. So I know that as a coach, one of the key things that I've been, looking for the whole time is to see some difference in my clients, and to see some changes in my clients. And what happens is I see things happening to them. I see them having a shift. I see something change in their face, or I see something change in their body language. And there's a part of me that knows that something important has happened. And as a coach, like, that's my, what's the word? That's my utopia. Like, that's my eureka. That's what I'm aiming for as a coach. But I never really thought about how those things happened and what was going on. So I might, somebody might have an experience in front of me, and I see a shift in them, and then I would start getting them to talk about what had just happened, because I didn't really know what it was. In all honesty, I kind of knew, but I didn't really know what it was. And then so I thought, like, if I see that happening in somebody, the next thing to do as a coach is to get them to talk about it, because it's clearly something important, and therefore they needed to talk about it. And so when you start looking at what Sid has to say, I mean, that's almost, it's like that's the last thing you want to be doing. is getting them to talk about it, but of course we still do. But so I started thinking about what is that, and whilst I was looking for it in my clients, I hadn't really paid attention to it in myself. I've had lots of coaching. I have worked with a mentor. I've worked with coach supervisors. I've had coaching for years and years and years, and these insights have been happening all of the time. And when I wrote my book, I realized just, insights are happening like, every other day almost, like they're always happening. But I'd never really thought about them in, from my own experience. So having written the book and then starting to reflect on it, started to think about this a bit more deeply. So for me, when I think about an insight, it's really something hard to put words to. Again, we're still talking about, and you're all used to this, is that, we're talking about something that's pretty intangible. But so the first thing that I kind of, that comes to mind is like, so an insight it's an experience more than anything. In fact, in Second Chance, Sid says, seeing, so he's using the word seeing is a state that must be experienced. And so what it is for me is like, when I think about it, it's like, if I have an insight, when I think about the insights that I've had that I can recollect that I've had, they're almost like a nanosecond in time when I felt something change within me. It's like a deep physiological but psychological experience. So I liken it to like a seismic shift that's happening. You know, when the plates shift underneath the surface of the earth, it's like something so deep has shifted, but there's not necessarily any outward change. But it's also like an instantaneous rewiring of my psychology. And the physical sensation, the ones that I've noticed, can be as tiny as like a flutter. Like I remember one insight where it just felt like a butterfly wing in my heart area. And then other times where it's been way bigger, it's felt much more like, oh my God, I feel like something massive has happened. And I don't know about you, I always wanted an insight like Sid's, like when he says, the whole world exploded. And then he never slept for 3 days or 3 nights. Like, I'm sorry, like I really wished I'd had one of those kind of insights, but clearly they can be as massive as the whole world exploding, and as tiny as a butterfly wing fluttering inside you. And for me, it's like they don't happen at the level of language. So sometimes words can be involved, but the words don't contain the insight, or the words are not sufficient. It's like, for me, it's like in this insight, when you have this instantaneous momentary experience, because for me the feeling doesn't last for very long at all, it's a very, very short, but it's like everything that I need to know is in that feeling, but no words to it. And something is really I know something has shifted, but I don't necessarily know what it is. And I know that one of the things that's happened for me is in the past, like I would have an insight like that. I do remember, and I wrote about this in A Caged Mind. I remember my first 3P insight, which was a pretty big one in the moment. It had a really, really sound, solid feeling to it, that something had just switched and clicked into place, and just something just dropped into place inside me. And I didn't really have the words for it, and I kind of knew what Dickon had been talking about when he was talking when I had this insight. But because I didn't know what it was, I didn't know what I was looking for, I did what I've always done with things like that. It's like, right, okay, something's happened. Don't know what exactly, but I know something's happened. And then just kind of brush it off, like a bit of fluff on your cardigan or something. It's just brush it away and then just get on with life again. And I know when I look back that I've been having insights my whole life. I mean, one thing that's really clear to me is like, you don't need to have a spiritual understanding to have insights. They're always happening. But the thing that happened with the spiritual understanding that we got through listening to Sid is it gave me a language to be able to understand more what was happening. And then the other thing that I realized is that I don't know whether insights are kind of like standalone events. Maybe there are some that are standalone events, but for me, they seem like they are things that kind of layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of maybe not the same insight, but they kind of happen, and they happen more like a dot-to-dot game. The children's puzzles, the dot-to-dots, where you kind of, you connect all the dots and they're not in any order, and then all of a sudden a picture appears. So one of the things that I've seen when I was reflecting is that, oh gosh, that insight related to that, related to this, related to that. and they were all over the place. You know, I don't understand about time at all. But, you know, if we're thinking time is not linear, that made sense to me, because all of these insights kind of seem to be related, but in a way that isn't in a linear pattern. So that's kind of what I've been seeing. And you know, when I look at looking at Sid's books with different eyes, it makes me, having kind of reflected on that and wrote about the insights and thought about them for myself, seeing his words in a completely different way. So, you know, in one of his talks, he said, when you hear beyond the word, an inner light goes on. And I just love that as a description for an insight. An inner light goes on. And it brings out inner knowledge and wisdom, spiritual intelligence, before the contamination of human thought. It is a feeling. Don't listen to the words, look for a feeling. And that was, you know, when you read what he says about insights over and over and over and over again, he says it's not in the words, it's in the feeling. And it took me a while to realize that. And it wasn't until I was writing about insights and exploring what I was feeling in those moments that I realized that it's like in that moment, in that feeling, without any words, there's a knowing. You know, he talks about knowing, doesn't he? He talks about knowing and knowing. You know, Dickon does a really good impression of him doing that, doesn't he? And it is. And then when we try to put words on it, let me see if I can find this. He says, he says, this is in The Enlightened Gardener. I couldn't begin. So now he's writing, in this bit, he's writing about insights from a storyteller point of view. And that was one of the things that I really started to enjoy about looking at all of his books. He's telling stories, but in so many ways he's showing these insights happening without telling people, and he's showing what to do without telling people what to do. I love that. So he talks about, this person is saying, I couldn't begin to explain my own insight. I realized that even as I spoke, the flash of understanding I had felt was fast disappearing from my head into oblivion. But whatever I had experienced left me with the most incredible feeling of elation and wonder. And that's kind of what happens with me with an insight. When I try to put words to it, because what he was doing, he was trying to explain his insight to another person. It was the two therapists. I can't remember the names now, but the two therapists. One was the woman, and he was trying to explain to the woman what had happened, what his insight was, and he couldn't. And in trying to put the words to it, he was lost. He lost it. And so for me, I started to realize that if I get that feeling, I want to try and stay in the feeling rather than try and find words for it. So when I look through his book, there's loads and loads of examples of insights happening. So here's one. We talked about all sorts of things, and I remember we started to laugh at something. I forget what it was. Then for no apparent reason, it was as if a huge dam burst in my head and I started to cry with tears of joy. And it's like when you see that, this was like a little insert in Enlightened Gardener where one of the therapists was talking to one of the staff members from the hotel, like a completely ancillary person to the story of the Enlightened Gardener and the therapist story. It's like, why is it in there? I think it's only a page, maybe even 2 pages on that. And for me, it's like there's a I believe with Sid that everything that is on the page serves a purpose, because he was too, like, he knew too much for it not to be. So, you know, he's kind of really showing that she doesn't remember what they talked about, and they started to laugh, and then this dam burst in the head. And then another one was, my whole body vibrated. The hairs on my neck felt electrified. My heart pounded and I felt breathless. It was the same feeling I had experienced earlier. I couldn't explain it, yet it was as tangible as the sidewalk I stood on. So there's loads and loads of explanations of insights. And then there's just one thing, and then I'm going to see what you guys think. So there's also one, I think this is, I didn't make a note of where it was. I think it was in the Enlightened Gardener again. This, oh no, it's in Second Chance. So Second Chance, I think it's Jonathan is talking about his experiences, or is he telling? Doesn't matter which way, anyway. So he says, it wasn't until one day, so he was talking about this conversation he'd had with the lady from Hawaii a while before. He said, it wasn't until one day, nearly 2 years later, that for no apparent reason, I started to think about my unusual encounter with the old lady and some of her unusual beliefs. And he was talking about the fact that something happened 2 years before, and then 2 years later, he has this realization related to that conversation. You know, and so for me, it's like the insights just, they don't kind of they're not necessarily a moment in time, one moment in time. Like and I know that I had experiences that happened to me before I could explain anything about insights, where it seems particularly related to insight now. So I remember years and years ago, before I knew anything about the principles, having an argument with my partner, and I was being completely irrational, and I knew there was a part of me that could see that I was being completely irrational. And it's funny how that moment in time is really vivid in my memory. I have no clue what we were arguing about, but that particular experience is very vivid in my mind. And it wasn't until much later on, and I was having, I can't remember who I was a conversation with, it might have been Dick and it might have been Chip Chipman even, where I suddenly had this realization of what that voice was, what that part of me that could see that I was being completely irrational was. It's like I needed to have that experience in order to have this experience now. So this is what I'm saying about how the insights are linked. So I think that's long enough from me. So I'd really love to hear if any of that makes sense to anybody, and what your thoughts are around it. What is an insight?
Yeah, so I'd like to invite you to, I think we're a small enough group that Maria will probably be able to see you if you just wave or unmute yourself. If you want me to be able to see you, you need to raise your digital hand, because I have you all at the top. And go to the reactions button and raise your digital hand. But either way, please feel free to ask questions or share what might be sparked in you.
So we've got Bruce and Tony. So Bruce, do you want to go first? You were quick off the mark with your hand up there.
Yeah, it was fast today. And Stephanie, we will schedule. Maria, great presentation, and I just ordered caged mine, so look out.
Thank you.
Yeah, what you just said about something that happened in the past, all of a sudden, ding, 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 here I am decades later, whatever. That's my experience as I related to Stephanie in a recent email, and I just went for a run and was listening to Judy Sedgman and Chris Heath. Gosh, it goes back to the mid-1980s in Minneapolis when I hung out with Joe Bailey, Keith Blevins, and Chris Heath at the Minneapolis Institute. And now, I'm in Colorado in retirement and just totally immersed in the three principles. I signed up for the apprentice program. And it's not that I do coaching or therapy, but I hang out in recovery rooms where I've been for family-wise 50 years, personally over 40 years, men's work over 30 years. meditation, 40 years, and equine work with military vets and first responders for about 6-7 years. And, the three principles just weaves in and out all that stuff. And I, just signed up for Judy and Chris's book review on Second Chance and Quest of the Pearl. And, it's just, I go back to the mid 1980s and I went, I heard that then when I was sitting one-on-one with Joe Bailey. And, it's just, that really resonated when you said that. It's like, because it was an insight, it really got stored at a significant level.
Mm.
And so when you scratch that itch, boom, it's there. So thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, Tony, and then Debbie. Would you unmute yourself, Tony? Oh, it's saying connecting to audio. Do you want to check that out and we'll go over to Debbie?
Yeah, Tony has 2 accounts, it looks like, so you might have to use the other one.
Oh,
hey.
I see. Hi, Debbie.
How
Nice
are you?
to meet
Good to
you.
see you. I think this is the first time we've ever met in person, but I love your work. Thank you.
Thank you. I love yours.
Thank you. And I came on late, but what I heard is that very last bit was perfect. And insight for me also happened years before what I knew what it was. I love the principles and I look at them through a faith-based lens. So for me, it was always prayer, and then I'd get some wisdom after praying. But what I found in the principles was it explained it so easily for someone who had faith or didn't have faith. There are other things that faith brings me besides the insight and wisdom. But when I look at that, what I remember is that every human being has the same capacity for insight and revelation. And then I don't have to drive their bus. I can stay in my own lane, love them, pray for them, encourage if that's what's called for. But the insight and wisdom gives me a beautiful opportunity to distinguish between the thoughts in my head and what wisdom and discernment is, for next right steps. And in this season, for the past 3.5 years, I have faced my mortality 7 times. A miracle that I am here. But that miracle came by wisdom and discernment of, we're having some serious things going on right now, but wisdom is telling me not to go to the ER. And then down the road, a couple of months later, now wisdom's telling me to go to the ER. So it wasn't like, all right, I have this little box that says you can never go.
Yeah.
But moment by moment by moment, when to stop a medication, when to start a medication, what to do in the middle of a reaction. So knowing this has literally saved my life. But what's so incredible now is I have the most delicious grandchildren. They're 5 and 7 now. But at 4 and 6, I wanted to explain to them the difference between wisdom and the thoughts in their heads. So I had little experientials, brought them out, and they just started, they got it so fast. And I said, well, have you ever experienced this? And they'd give me examples. Any of your friends? Oh, yeah, Anna doesn't want to brush her teeth. This one, Lucy doesn't want to take a bath. Cedric hits people. And I'm like, you guys got this. So we wrote a children's book together that we're working with the illustrator on right now. And so at 4 and 6 years old, they were able to get it. But my intention of the book was to teach little ones not to believe the thoughts in their head when it tells them to hurt themselves or someone else. But that's just an opportunity to go get some love, go get some comfort, be with someone that you can talk things out with. And then wisdom will come through, and showing them that wisdom feels different. You know, the thoughts in our head are almost like the breaking news feed on CNN. But when wisdom comes in, you just know what to do. There's no committee saying, should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? It's just a knowing that, wait, yes, this is it. And sometimes wisdom is very subtle and very quiet. But the truth I see in wisdom is it will never hurt you or somebody else. It will never judge or condemn. The voice in my head will do that a lot. But wisdom never does. Wisdom is full of love and understanding, as Sid would say. And so beautiful to know that. And so beautiful to know that in this human experience, we will have ups and downs and ins and outs, and we don't control the thoughts that come into our head, but we do have a choice in how we move forward with them. And for me, when that ticker tape parade is going off, the symphony of, oh my God, what ifs, and this could happen and that could happen, that's just my red flag to pause and pray at that moment, because I know clarity will come, wisdom will come, but it's not there in that moment. So my life brings me so much joy. Can't wait to put this book out for the kids and the little ones, because even at such a young age, they can get it.
Going back to what you said very early on about, I loved what you were saying about almost like the ordinary decision-making moments of insight, you know, that when you said about go to the ER, don't go to the ER, take the meds, don't take the meds, you know, that one of the things that I saw when I was writing about a period of depression, I saw all those very, very small moments when a light, you know, Sid talks about an insight being in a light, like in that period of darkness, those nanoseconds of light that said, go to the doctors, go to a therapist, take medication, come off the medication, go dancing, you know, all these little tiny things that are just ordinary, which are, you know, insights as well. Because like you said, there's just a knowing in that. So I love what you said there. Thank you, Debbie. We've got a couple of hands up. I see that Tony's audio is still saying connecting. So shall we go to Peter, and then we'll try Tony again in a minute.
Thank you, Maria. And thank you for your presentation. I really love that one, because I find so much similarities to my own journey within 3P. Just to the ordinary things, the small ordinary things that happen during the days. And just this experience that I had during the days, that they could be insights. I didn't realize that until now during your presentation. And it's really, really good. Thank you for that. And I think the most challenge for me is to get quiet enough. Not let the thought race in ahead, and create some sort of stories or expectations or something like that, but get quiet and just listen and be aware in the moment. I think it's really helpful. So I really appreciate your presentation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. I know what you mean about the noise in your head. And also, one of the experiences that I wrote about in my book was a particular incident when my husband collapsed on a flight. And I had so much noise in my head, I can't tell you. I really thought he was dying. He thought he was dying. We were 20 minutes into an 8-hour flight. It was like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? But there was a different part of me guiding me through that was that, you know, I had this complete sense of there was this going on and there was this. Like, you know, completely and utterly independent of each other. Like this was not affecting this, and this was not having anything to do with this. Like for me, I know Sid does talk about getting a quiet mind. I think I've got one of those points here where he says that. I'll come back to it if I find it later, but he definitely says getting quiet is a good time, but the quiet is there all the time, and so for me it's kind of remembering where to look as opposed to trying to quieten the noise down. I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean, what you're trying to tell me, but because in some discussion I have with friends or with relatives, some part of me want to get into the argument, but some part of me won't do that, because the words that come out from my mouth won't help the discussion at all.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it, that you can see that. Yeah. Lovely. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Tony, shall we give it another go?
Yeah. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think I must be somehow getting the sound through the one and vision through the other. But if you can hear me, that's great. Yeah, I just think it's so incredible. Wisdom. Do we realize what wisdom is? We have a sixth sense, and as I see it, it is our awareness. We're either consciously aware of what is happening, or we're not in every moment. So much so that possibly a child, when born, knows everything, only they haven't created a language to interpret it, and we don't know what the child is thinking, but it's still having thoughts. And those thoughts are that child's insights. But until we connect and the child has used some language to tell us that they're actually communicating with us, we're actually communicating anyway, because communication is just like a holistic thing, the same way as wisdom is just a holistic thing. Wisdom, call it whatever you like. All our insights, it's just so holistic. And as soon as and that's really why, as I see it again, why we can't explain it very easily, because it's so nebulous. I'm a failed chemical engineer who did a chemistry degree. The failing of the chemistry, or failing of the, or not doing the chemical engineering, was most probably as a result of spending a year in the South African army, where my brain atrophied so much after school that I couldn't think clearly in gases and vapors and partial pressures. But even the chemistry that I didn't ever use it. I then got into law and admitted in South Africa, and then emigrated from South Africa to where I'm now in Perth, Australia, and got admitted as a solicitor there as well. But before having left South Africa, I got into computing. And I've been in a combination of law and computing ever since that. The insights are so nebulous. It makes me think that everything is insights. When we have to go to the toilet, have you ever tried to refuse going to the toilet? You're literally in the shit. doesn't matter whether you're doing a number 1 or a number 2, you have got to go, or at least there comes a stage where you cannot refuse, because it will be a mess. So I think, and it's only happening to me now, I think everyone is having insights, but we're so innocent, so naive, that we almost claim ownership of them, that we're, oh, I'm so bright, oh, you know. And as I was saying, you know, I have these degrees, but they are literally like degrees of insanity, because they haven't really they haven't helped really, or maybe they have, in some regard, from a personal perspective, but from a holistic perspective, they've most probably given me the ability to express myself. But we all know that the personal expression of whatever we say is not the important side. It's the feeling with which we say it, which is almost the communicator. It's not us. It's almost as though we, out of the equation, we just happen to be a communicator.
And the one that needs lawyers and computer experts.
That's right. It doesn't matter. I've got some incredible people that I've met. I mean, I've met an actuary who, and most actuaries, or 50% of them, work for insurance companies. But this guy that I met, I mean, his name is Joe Wong. He lives in Perth. He plays, I haven't seen him for decades, but he designed a money market system that I had to convert in the late 80s. And he was just a man who he could speak to the cleaner, the managing director, and everyone in between at whatever level he needed to. And the interesting thing is, I started this job and I didn't even know what a money market was. And here I was going to convert this old system into a new system that he'd designed. So, you know, the fact that I think I know something is just a complete fallacy. I know nothing. My name is Manuel, as I said it early on. We are living in the moment, and in the moment only, and completely distracting ourselves from the wisdom and from the insights that are coming all the time. That's how I'm seeing it.
So what you're saying, I have this Post-it note on my desk, and it says two things, and I'll come back to them in a minute. But one of them is, I am in the center. Let me just put it away for some reason. I bet I can't put my hand on it. No, it's one of those things. I moved it. I know I moved it. Oh, I know it is still here. So the first thing it says is, "You are in the center of my will for your life right now." This is a quote from a religious book. And that it really struck me, like wherever we are right now is exactly where we're meant to be. And like you know, I started a writing and publishing company in the pandemic. That for me feels completely the result of insights nudging me in a direction that I had no intention of going in up until that point. And then the other thing that you've really got me pondering that you said was around children and insights, babies and insights. It's like if transformation happens for me as an adult through insight, and for my clients as through insight, then what's happening for babies must be the result of insights, because they're transforming in ways that are way beyond the level that we're transforming at by the time we get to our age. So that's really, I've never thought about that before. And then the other thing that I just wanted to say, the other thing that it says on this note is going to the bathroom is a work of God. It's completely, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just depends on what you want to call it. It's once we identify something, then we create like a fixation, which is not helpful. It puts us in a prison that we don't really want to be in. So it's better to just live in the unknown and say, okay, well, I had that thought. Well, what does it mean now?
Yeah.
And from a child's perspective, all that's happening to the child is the child is actually conditioning themselves based on what their parents, their grandparents, and all their siblings, etc., and all their friends are saying to them, and they are literally taking themselves away from the pure perfection that they have at birth. And all of us, when we realize that we have conditioned ourselves, then start unconditioning ourselves, and then we reach this beautiful space that we're now talking about. So we've realized we have been so innocently creating definitions that we've lived by, but we don't need the definitions. We only need the definitions literally to understand. We don't need anything fixed in our life, because we have freedom to think whatever we want to think. It's so all-encompassing, and because it's so all-encompassing, as soon as you try and say something specific about it,
it's like
it has no meaning.
Water through your fingers, isn't it? Sifting sands.
Yeah. So it's like trying to express a feeling. Is it impossible? I don't know. It certainly feels like it sometimes.
It definitely is.
But I'm sure that all of us are actually almost sensing one another in this moment we're all spending together.
Yeah.
Because we're all one anyway.
So is there anybody else? Thank you so much, Tony. Is there anybody else who wanted to say anything before we move on? So we've only got 10 minutes left. So.
Oh, I've got something more to add, but let everyone else have a say.
Okay. Do you want to say what you want to say then, and then I'll just there's a couple of other things that I just want to say about, and then
okay.
It's okay.
Right. Some of the people here may know John Wood, like Bruce Iverson. I'm sure he's met John Wood. Have you met John Wood?
No.
Okay. John Wood was involved with the principles from about 1980 and spent about 5 years in the UK at not UK, in the US, but set up a center in here in Perth. He has written 3 books already. He's about to write a 4th book. I'm working with him, and he's given me authority to send PDF versions of his books to the world, basically, at no cost. Would you like me to send them to you? One of them is called we've got it here.
Yeah, we can maybe connect with me afterwards. I think is my email address on the. I think my email address is on the blurb for this presentation. So
it is. It's on
I don't think it was.
Talk about that offline.
Yeah.
Okay, doke. So I just really wanted to finish off around insights then, because having this these kind of thinking and realizations about insights, because I've worked with people, and my whole thing has been over time is trying to get or trying to help people to have insights that's going to change their lives. So when you look at what Sid says, so there's a few things that he says that he's really clear about around insights. One is there is no answer from the outside. So that kind of buggers me up when I'm working with people, because here's me thinking I'm working with people to try and help them to have insights that's going to change their lives, and yet they can't get it from me. So that's a bit of a blow. And he said wisdom is revealed from the inside out. But then he says a teacher can only lead you to it via words. So we can try and create the space and help people to kind of have that, but hoping that you'll have the courage to look within yourself and find it inside your own consciousness. And so Sid's really clear about we can't make insights happen for other people, but he with his books and with his audios and with his videos and everything, he hopes that with the words that we use that people will connect in with the feeling. But the other thing that is for sure is, like, we can't make insights happen for ourselves. I was having conversation with Dickon last year on a fairly regular basis, because I was getting a little bit frustrated about my weight and my I don't exercise enough and my diet wasn't that good, and I kept saying to Dickon, I'd really love an insight that is going to shift the way that I my relationship with food and my relationship with exercise, and that's going to result in me being slim. And we never once could make it happen, because that's one of the things is you can't really make it happen. So but Sid in the missing link is really clear about there's a section about choosing a teacher, and I remember reading that one of the many times that I've read it, and what it did is I read it one day and I thought, oh my God, this isn't about me finding a teacher. This is, if I want to be a teacher, this is how I need to be as a person. And so, all we're doing is we're kind of creating a space. So I wanted to finish off by this is in summary from The Ultimate Answer. So this is one of the things he left. It was kind of his final talk that he gave, wasn't it? And so I picked out bits from it. It says, what you're searching for is a silent mind, a state of no thought. What you do is you get a silent mind and go inside. You have a realization of the wisdom that lies within. And that state of no thought is the thing for me. It's like, for me, it's no thought, it's no words. It's the state, it's the feeling. He keeps really coming back to insights are the feeling, they're not the words. It says, how these mystical books will say the difference between listening and listening. Little listening is from the intellect. Listening is listening from the spiritual wisdom that lies within. It's the same with hearing and seeing. They're all the same thing. It's not the words. Nobody can describe it in words. So no insights can be described with words. But once you've had a realization, it'll come to you, and it will always come via a nice feeling. And for me, it can be a really small, nice feeling, or it could be quite a big, nice feeling. But everybody in this world, literally everybody in this world, is only one thought away from a true realization or a realization. One thought. And that's what I said before. It's a state of no thought from the intellect. The intellect goes to sleep for a split second. And so for me, this insight, if we're describing the insight, it's that split second when there's no words and there's no language and there's no intellect involved. But that's the thing that really makes the difference. So just in summary, you can't describe it in words, even though we've done our very best to do that today. It comes via a feeling. It's a state of no thought. And what it means by that is no thought from the intellect. The intellect goes to sleep for a split second. I love that. It is like that. It's a split second thing that happens. And so, you know, now that kind of what I'm seeing around insights is really helping me to sit more comfortably with people, because I don't know what's going to create an insight. I don't know whether an insight's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. I'm sure insights are going to happen for people, but it might not necessarily be right here, right now. And it takes all the pressure off. When you see all this information that Sid's put in here about insights in everything that he's put out, it's kind of helpful for me as somebody who wants to help people have nicer, easier lives, that it's not all on me. Like what Tony was saying, it's not all on me. But I also trust that if we're here together, there's a reason we're here together. And hopefully it's just, we're maybe just connecting a little dot somewhere along the line. So I think that's enough from me.
Thank you so much, Maria. And thank you everyone for joining us for this exploration into insight and what it means. And I hope you had a feeling. I hope you noticed many feelings throughout. Nice feelings. I know I did. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Have a beautiful rest of your day or evening.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.